Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. I don't believe, I'll ask the clerk, we do not have a quorum. Is that correct? We don't have a quorum, but we do have a schedule. We're going to try to stick to that as closely as possible. The adoption of the minutes from last month. We've had time to look over those minutes, had time to take a look at them. Are there any corrections? Senator, you're the only one.
I don't know.
You believe they're fine? Would you like to move that minutes be?
Yeah, we
can't do that. We'll do that another time. Okay. So that brings us down to presentations. And you've had a chance to look over the bio from the distinguished commissioner from Preston County. And I'll have him go to the microphone and introduce himself.
I don't need a microphone, maybe.
Stay right where you're at, I'm sorry.
Okay, sure.
I'm positive, I have to think through each meeting.
If you need me to move.
Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit about maybe a personal experience with the regional jail, and I know it's a struggle for everybody. So I start when I was in early days of being a commissioner when we did have a jail, a county jail, and I was witnessing the process of going from the local jail and all the complications of that over to the regional jail. And I will have to say that with some of the things that we had to deal with in expenses, the medical costs, the staffing, and then the lack of money for updates in the jail, that was a good thing. Been difficulties since then, we all know that, but I watched the prisoners leave the little county jail and get in the vans and head to the regional jails. We actually had some of those prisoners take their life before the move took place. I guess the fear of moving to another jail. I think there were 2 or 3 that were that passed away in jail, self-inflicted, in the month or so before the move. So first of all, I appreciate the change and what has happened from the standpoint of expenses and operating a jail. The second thing is, all of us commissioners, I'm sure, appreciate the freeze while we have the opportunity to talk about some solutions. One of the important things I think to know is that, and I've read over some of the Marshall statistics from that study, and there's going to be about 10 pieces to the puzzle of trying to keep the system going and save the county some money. We're struggling with that, especially if a county like ours with a $9 million budget and we see a $250,000 or $500,000 increase. That's a big chunk of it. So one of the expenses we have that some of the others may not would be the transportation to the regional jail. And that's several $1,000s in a year. It would be, if there are no delays, about a 3-hour round trip. And that's not including the time spent at the regional jail in Elkins. The route that we travel is riddled with white-tailed deer, and we have spent thousands of dollars in correcting deer damage to the vehicles. We have to have 2 or 3 spares for the transport officers because hardly a week goes by that they don't encounter a collision with deer. That's not an expense that we consider in the per diem. But it's real because, and at times it's really expensive for us. There's no cure that you have for that other than a regional jail closer to home. But I guess when we talk about the cost of the per diem, we're not talking about these other expenses that we're encountering. One of the things that has worked for us, and I know works for other counties, is the gathering of our committee or group to look at the regional jail bill to make sure that if somebody needed to be moved on to the state's tab, that it was done, and that sort of thing. And that has worked well, from the prosecutor to our administrator to somebody from the sheriff's department. Now, one thing that might help is that if we would ask the Supreme Court to have the circuit judge to have the court clerk involved in that meeting each week. It really doesn't take very long because you only have to cover a few that you didn't address the week before. But that would be a help. And I know that you said that really you want suggestions on things that might help. These are little things. The bonds, a good experience that we had a few years ago. We have some music festivals that have found a lot of green space in Preston County, and they come, and one of them was the All Good Festival. And honestly, it was not all good. We had a lot of expense for the county and a lot of issues. The traffic was backed up from that location in Preston County into Morgantown, or a lot of things, but there were a lot of arrests and a number of people sent to regional jail, some for a few days, some for a few weeks. We actually had one, and I meant to try to find out how long this individual was in the regional jail. I believe my memory serves me correctly that there was a $300 bond that he couldn't make, and he spent about a year there. Now, if you do the math, that didn't work out very well. And he was from someplace, DC or someplace like that. A lot of the people were able to pay their bond, and some of them forfeited their cars and went on, but there were 20 or 30,000 people who were there, and that was a rough period of time, and it happened more than once. But the bonding that happens now, sometimes there is one individual that, and this may be more in the magistrate category, but somehow a bond may be excessively high, it seems, for one and not for the other, the crime being about the same. And we're thinking if there could be some constructive work with the Supreme Court again, or whoever the folks are that train and work with the magistrates, there might be a solution that would help there. Considering that one was a $300 bond, I wanted to pay it because, and I found out pretty quickly that we can't do that. So that was taken care of there. That was a pretty wide awakening because that $18,000 or so could have been used for a lot of other things. Probably home confinement has been pretty successful for us, as long as the officers do a good job in monitoring that, to make sure that they're not doing what they shouldn't be doing. And that takes a pretty close look to keep an eye on them. It's probably saved us a lot of money. The problem we have with that is that we pay for the devices and the security and that sort of thing. And some home confinement folks pay $2 a day maybe for it, and others pay our cost maybe 10, and others will pay more. One of the stories, our home confinement, when we were trying to figure out what was going on with that, one of the home confinement officers told me that this guy was on home confinement. He paid $2 a day because he claimed that there was a financial problem with paying the full $10. But when he went to the house, he said, I would have been happy to have had that 65 or 70-inch TV and the side-by-side and those things that were part of that guy's life. But he couldn't pay. And so, yes, it's better than $48.50, but it's still expensive. I think there again, when they plead poverty, I don't know that it's always poverty. If it is, then I think they need that help. Another thing that I believe could happen is maybe a few years ago, this has nothing to do with the jail system except for an example. We had an awful lot of, with our animal control and with our folks, had an awful lot of problems with a lot of stray animals. I mean, there wasn't enough room in the shelter. So we tried to beef up the adoptions and make more room for more animals. But in the end, what we found out was we made some changes in the policies and got a lot of money that was contributed to the cause to have some surgeries done on these animals that made it so that they weren't reproducing as much. And all of a sudden, instead of needing more room, after 6 or 8 years of this, the problem has gone down to the point where we don't have that many animals in there. So attacking it from the cause made a big difference in the animal shelter. What I'm saying is that in talking to our prosecutor, and you guys, gals, all know it, that we have a big problem with the drugs, and that's the reason that the jail bills have probably gone so high, and that the number of people in there are, exceeding their capacity. I'm thinking with the ARPA money and with this opportunity, I think that drug treatment. So I talked to, I'm heavily involved in EMS and fire. So I talked to a doctor who's in the emergency room, and I said, oh, what's the deal with this, with the transports? He said, we have an awful time with the transports and finding a place for them to go when they need help. And so they might be in the emergency room, taking up a bed, waiting to go someplace to get help for 3 days. And that tells me that there's not enough readily accessible help for the drug problem for those who do want to do better. So it could be for those who are in jail, for those who get out, for those who are on home confinement. Some kind of better system to make it more available would probably cut down on the problems, because recidivism is one of the big problems. We send these guys back and back and back, and they don't get help. They come home, they don't get help. I think that some of those don't want help, but I also think in talking to some of them that they do. And so another suggestion that somebody made was, we have all these places that are having trouble paying their jail bill. Maybe some kind of I don't know how that would work with people who do pay, but a forgiveness kind of thing, a part of it, with the stipulation that they would begin to pay it monthly if they got some of it relieved. I don't know if that's a possibility or not. But drug treatment, we've got Hope Mount Hospital. It's only partially filled. There have been talks of closing it, but then it doesn't happen. Some of the patients that are there, patients that have to be someplace like that, and they don't have any place else to go. But there's a lot of that. It's out in the country. It's away from a lot of the distractions of a city or something to that effect, and that would be a good place to maybe consider some kind of, and that's not your job, but this suggestion or these suggestions are not going to be all the things that you guys can do to cut this. But if some relief comes along because of what you're doing, that's going to help us. But it's not getting any better. It has gone up a lot, and I even see the efforts that the legislature is working with the dilapidated buildings, as being one of those things that will help, because the drug users are going into these empty and abandoned buildings and causing problems. Law enforcement responds, and then the next thing you know, they're in jail. And they don't have any place to go if they come back out, besides going back into another building like this and causing problems. A good, how rapid, a couple of weeks ago on a weekend morning, I'm a volunteer fireman, and we got called to a structure fire in our small town. And when we arrived, it was pretty well fully engulfed. We put the fire out. First thing to know is that the house was abandoned and had been for some time, and it was owned by the state of West Virginia because of the tax thing. And so then the other thing was, as we were there, the neighbors in that area of town said, you know, the drug folks have been going in and sheltering there. And yesterday evening, we saw probably 6 that went in the door that was broken down. And so then all of a sudden, this turned into a situation where we had to see if they were still in there. And so the rest of the day was spent combing through the rubble to make sure that none of them had perished in that fire. That's, those people have been in jail several times. I talked with the deputy who was there at the scene, and he said, oh yeah, he said we were just in there, and took 3 out that had warrants or something to that effect. But so those folks, that is one of the answers, to take away some of the places that are sheltering them. So I guess I say thanks for everything that you're doing. I know it's a tough nut to crack, but I think that there's probably 10 different things that can be done by different agencies and by different people. And I don't think there's 2 sides to this. If there is, tell me. There's only one side to this jail problem, and that is to try to do everything we can to cut down the number of people that are sent there and the number of bills that we receive. And, you know, you guys are smarter than me with this, but I know that we need help, and that those are some of the things that might take a piece of it. That's all. Thank you very much for the.
Thank you, Commissioner. Does anyone have questions for Commissioner? Chairman? Yes.
You mentioned that $300. Is that a cash bond?
I'm not sure. I would have to check. See, I just remember all during the year the discussion of, that guy's still in there, so I don't know. Yeah.
And
I should have checked that, but that was just one of the things that popped in my mind, you know, when I was looking.
other thing I thought about, how do you have any idea how many man hours your deputies are off the road doing transportation work?
Okay, we have transport officers. We call them utility officers. I would, if you've got 3 hours round trip and you make 3 trips a week average, you know, but they're on duty. Now, they might have some other tasks. They might have to do something with the courthouse and the courts and everything in between, but primarily they are tasks. Their task is to transport people, and they get called out. Okay, so if they've got their hours in for the week, if they get called out on Saturday or at midnight or 2 a.m., then it could be overtime. Now, you know, they're probably at $15 an hour, but it's 60 miles each way to the jail, and so the wear and tear and wages and benefits and everything to these guys, I don't know. But I tried to do a little math. I actually called our sheriff's office and I said, how many trips do you make a year and what's it cost? And they didn't get back to me in time for this. I know that it's $30,000, $40,000 a year without that. And if all 55 counties have this, except the ones that are blessed to be close to the jail, right there's a lot of money that's spent with that. But we got to do it. I understand that. I was there when we had the old jails. That was tough. That was tough. They ate well. Good, it rained. Wednesday was pepperoni roll day.
Same.
Anybody else have any questions? Chair knows. The $300 bond, that would be an extraordinary thing that doesn't happen often. But the last time I checked, I think we have statewide about 46% of our regional jail folks who pretrial detainees.
That's
You have that?
another one. Yeah,
I'm sorry?
that's another issue.
And do you see a pathway forward, Commissioner, that we might be able, in your case, I'm not asking you to talk about the whole state, but in your case, in Preston County, is there a pathway forward? I know you look at these stats every week.
Yeah.
But is there something that can be done there?
I think that the judge's schedule is bound up and stacked up to the point where these things take longer to come back through. Our judge has asked for another circuit judge. Not officially, not something we're acting on right now, but he's warned us that may be coming out now.
Well,
We have
maybe out
space,
now.
you know, what's that?
I said it may be out now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know,
Yes.
it's just what it is, you know, that there's no use to go in the back room and try to figure it out. I think everybody needs to know. I know when our people the fire departments or the EMS people were the others who want some help. And they look at $1 million a year for a jail bill, you know, that's where there's no place else to get it. But I don't know what you do about it.
It's real money.
Yeah, that becomes real money.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also have with us today a gentleman who is no stranger to this committee. And I'd like to introduce Brad Douglas, Chief of Staff, Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brad Douglas. I'm Chief of Staff of the Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Happy to talk to you all again. I don't really have much of a presentation other than just to go over a couple things that I've mentioned to you all in the past. And one of those is that, you know, we're willing and ready to provide whatever information we can provide to whoever to be part of the solution to this issue. We work with counties all the time on billing issues. We've taken a number of steps over the last couple of years to improve communication with the county when it comes to their jail bill and what's it made up of. Just recently, our Division of Administrative Services started providing a report weekly to each county this is what we're doing before right now. And for those counties, like the Commissioner mentioned, that look at that jail bill closely, that hopefully will help them keep a close eye on it. You know, in October every year, we are going to sort of report to the county what the current calculation, the state budget office per diem calculation is going to be in plenty of time before the county's next budget cycle. Where we're at right now is the legislature, as you guys know, more than anybody, passed a bill that throws it per diem for another year at 48.25. So, absent legislative intervention, June 30th, 2023, that will expire, and the state budget office per diem will kick in. That per diem is currently $54.13 a day. That's based off of a 3-year rolling average. So I'm sure that will change between now and then, but right now it's currently $54.13. So we've also, I've provided the graph to you guys before, but it's not significantly different now. But over the past few years, we've taken a number of steps in the state to reduce the burden of the per diem in counties. The legislature passed a bill a few years ago changing the billing date from sentencing to conviction, which was a significant change. We've implemented a goals program in several facilities, which really saves the counties and the state money by shortening the sort of judicial process for folks that need substance abuse treatment. But we're expanding that goals program. Our goal is to try to get it in every jail Um, there's been a shift in sort of the overall revenues for the special revenue fund. From a few years ago, it was 60% of the burden was on the county. Now 60% of the burden is on the state. So we're, as I said before, we stand ready and willing to provide whatever information we can provide to help you guys with what you're tackling.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Just clarification from one of our previous sessions, the raise that was given to correctional officers, that was base building?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You mean the raise coming up or the raise that happened a few years ago?
We had one a few years ago and one coming up.
So the one a few years ago, the 2, 2, and 2 that happened, there was a base building for all correctional employees, but we went to the personnel board and turned it into a base building raise for the officers. So now the officer starting salary is $30,654. After that, $6,000 lower, which is a historic change compared to where we were a few years ago. I mean, it hasn't been very long since their starting salary was 22. Now it's 30. That 30 is not really cutting it anymore, as I talked to you guys about last month. So that's where we're at currently.
Thank
you.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm sure this question I guess for council. But, I was just looking back at during our legislative committee meeting during the last session, the special select committee. Which, yes, again, I think there is an organization which should be in past talked about before. This committee is an interim committee, both with the Oversight committee on regional jails, the correctional facility authority. Do we have a correctional facility authority essentially exempted? And we have a special select committee in the House that will bring the justice. Is there a companion committee in the Senate? Is there a standing committee in the Senate to deal with corrections? I don't know. No. There was a report that distributed at the last meeting we attended, I think it was on March 17th. That report was compiled. Do you recall?
I don't. Can't remember who it's from. Correction July.
Which specific recommendations that were in that report with regard to some steps that could be taken by the legislature to address some of the underlying issues that are resulting in high jail bills for counties?
I'm not sure exactly what Dell was talking about. I mean, I'm willing to go back
So we've got minutes and
I
see
think
what
you might be referring to the handout that talked about changing the salary of the employees from.
No, I do recall that discussion, but this was actually a separate report that was distributed to members of the committee report that you're yeah, what we said. So as we search for solutions to this problem, I think there was some recommendations that were made in that report that would be helpful.
I'm happy to provide, I'm sure we can figure out what you're talking about, so I'm happy to provide that back.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We, because of the lack of a quorum, we can take any official action, but the chair would like to say to DOCR and County Commissioners Association, as well as the Association of Counties for representation of sheriffs. It is my intention to have a work group that will look into this matter, look at all the stakeholders at the table. Listen, I don't think this has ever been done. So this is a good opportunity for us to bring everybody to the table and have open discussions, because everybody in the room will admit that everybody in the room is suffering from this. And so this is my intent, and for the folks here that are representing those associations, it would be, we could discuss who you want to put on the committee, but we will need to know as soon as we can. And the goal is to have a report for this committee in September. That will be our goal, is to have a report ready in September. And I might say that I saw Berkeley here a little bit ago with the governor's office. is interested in being a part of the study group and work group, they would be invited to take part as well. Is there any other business to bring before the committee that we can talk about the lack of quorum? No others, then I will look to the esteemed senator for a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.